Jay, you came to me actually by mistake because I was talking with, who was I talking to? Who introduced us?
Stoops and Blackie, actually.
Blackie.
Probably
Okay,
both
so
right at the same time. Yeah, yeah.
Right, yeah, Stoops and Blackie. And it's funny because I was talking with Blackie, and Blackie says, "Is there anybody you'd be really interested in talking to on your podcast?" And I said, "Man, I would love to talk to somebody who does anti-poaching stuff," because that was something when I visited Africa in 2017, 2018, I didn't realize it was as advanced as like somebody like you is making it, like that you're really doing the work that's going on there. And I wanted to get into that. I thought, man, I would love to move to Africa and do anti-poaching stuff with dogs. So talking to you, and in our previous conversation, it's such a pleasure because you're really doing something that is at the core of both of my passions, which is Africa and dogs. So this is going to be a fun chat.
Appreciate it, mate. And it doesn't mean you can't go over there because I'm there.
Yeah,
you know,
no, I'll go with you.
And help us out. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, mate.
I'm not going alone if I know you're there. Now you run some huge anti-poaching programs, some really successful things, and I want to get into that. But before I do, I think it's important to talk about your background without mentioning too much. But you were in the British Army. That's where you got your training, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I was born and raised in Zimbabwe. Grew up there. And when I was 17, I left. There was a whole lot of political stuff going on. And I went to join the British Army. I didn't really have anything else to do. No plan to join the army. No plan to work dogs or do anything like that. It just kind of all fell into place. And so I served in the British Army. I served 8 years, so not a great deal of time. Went to some cool places. Got some really good mates out of it. Great role models. And I've been very fortunate with that experience.
And what did you do in the British Army with dogs? Like, what was your training, basically, like the groundwork?
I mean, I did all sorts. It's a different kind of like ecosystem over there when it comes to the working dog community. It's very career orientated, and you start off with a patrol dog, and you go and do a basic patrol dogs course, and you kind of like get a bit of experience doing that, and then they move you on to like different capabilities. And because I was a Zimbo and I didn't have any family in the UK, well, I had family, but not like a whole bunch of like closeness going on. I didn't really go and visit them a lot. So if I took leave, I stayed on camp, and camp was home for me. I didn't really. So my family was the army. My family was my mates in the barracks with me, that kind of thing. And so anytime there was an opportunity to attend a course, they look for volunteers, and I'd be like, I'll do it. I've got nothing else to do. So I'd cancel leave to go and jump on a course. And everybody thought I was crazy for it. But yeah, I mean, I did mine detection dogs. I did tracking dogs, patrol dogs. I mean, we did armed explosive search dogs in Northern Ireland. I served in Kosovo and Bosnia, obviously Northern Ireland, like I mentioned. We went all over the place, and it was all with dogs. And, we were a search asset. We were there to support everybody. Probably my best deployment was in Bosnia. I had a lot of fun over there. It was a cool program. We were, as a mine detection dog handler. Yeah. And I mean, like Blackie was a couple of deployments before me, and that was one of those incentives for me to get over there. He's a good dog man, and I respect him a hell of a lot. And he's been, he's an arsehole. I'll tell him that to his face. I can't wait for him to listen to this. He'll have a chuckle. Yeah. But he's one of my best friends in the world. And he knows how to keep me in place, and he knows how to keep me motivated. And Yeah, I had a good time doing that. But I mean, we were like walking into like minefields with a dog, and it
Yeah,
was
you
a complete
mentioned,
trust
yeah.
in an animal. So for me, that was like probably the riskiest work we ever did. But
Uh,
it's like the calmest work at the same time, because obviously it's completely controlled. It's, but you're going into, a field filled potentially with like landmines and
right.
casualty extraction or creating space for medics to get in, whatever the scenario is. And yeah, it was pretty intense. We did a whole lot of cool things with that, and the dogs were superbly trained,
Yeah.
which I was grateful to have that experience. I could see where you can take a dog to, and a lot of
Yeah.
that stuff that I learned then I apply to the programs now.
Because when you're doing mine detection or explosives accelerant detection, those dogs are trained to scent on an odor and give you an indication on that. And so you just transferred that over to the anti-poaching thing, right?
Yeah, so I mean, like I'm getting a little bit ahead, but so basically, once I left the British Army, I had an opportunity to come over to the US, and that's how I ended up here. And I was basically doing counterterrorism, and it was preparing dogs for Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and whatnot. But like going back to the mine stuff, we trained dogs to find a very, very small amount of target odor,
Right.
and they would give a passive indication, and it was like, we call it a fringe response. So the dog would, as soon as it smelled the landmine, it would give a sit response. But that's normal day-to-day stuff for any kind of detection dog that we train. So there's nothing great about that. Where we took it to a different level was we taught the dogs to find 0.0025 of a gram
Right.
of TNT. We took them and we'd fly helicopters over the dogs. We would go down to the abattoir and get pig's blood and would spray it all over the field. Some of the guys' wives would come down and they'd play casualty, and they'd lie down on the ground and scream their lungs out, and we'd have to search around them, because if somebody walks into a minefield and they step on a landmine and we've got to go and get to them, the dog's got to be able to search around their body, because they could be partially lying on a landmine. So the dog's got to be able to like deal with that. There's blood, screaming, stress, helicopter, ambulances, smoke, flames. You can imagine it's just a really tough situation potentially. So we had to train them for worst case scenario, which was kind of like what I'm describing.
Yeah.
And then from that, I learned, okay, the sky's the limit when it comes to dog training. So
For sure.
we did stuff with those dogs, and it changed the British Army's training methodology when it came to detection. That's how successful the program was. We never lost one guy or never lost one dog.
Wow.
So we were very fortunate, but very proud of that chapter of my life. Very proud of the people I worked with, and we did some really cool things.
So because I want to stay on that for a second, because maybe this podcast is going to go a lot longer than I thought. When you're talking about finding dogs that are now, because I understand, super simple: indicate, find odor, indicate, mark, reward. Not a complicated thing to do, right? But when you're talking about this I had no idea about. You're talking about distractions, people screaming, helicopters flying over, blood on the floor. These are all things that would trigger a dog's natural prey drive, right? How do you get a dog to go past that? How do you get a dog to start being that focused? What's the secret? Not that I want.
Oh man,
what's the secret?
There's no secret to it, mate. It's just perseverance, patience, and just incremental stages of training. And as the dogs get reinforced for doing the right thing over and over and over, then we can push it a little bit more. It was 6 months of training with some of the best dog trainers I've worked with in my life. So I didn't invent it. I was a young soldier. They told me what to do, and I, yes sir, I'm going to go and do it.
Right.
But they were good trainers, as in teachers, and I learned so much. And when the position became open, if I'm completely honest, I probably wasn't ready to go and do it. I was a bit young at the time, and I didn't have the dog experience that I probably needed. But another friend of mine, he was a South African guy in the British Army. We were, two peas in a pod.
Right.
We both had an accent, I guess, and we both volunteered for it. And we had 2 dogs each, and we'd have to certify with both dogs to deploy to Bosnia. And there was a lot of people, and basically what it came down to, there was a need for dogs. The engineers approached the Royal Army Veterinary Corps, who I was serving with, and they said, can you train a dog to go from point A to point B quicker than what we can, like on a buckle, lying on our belly, and then prodding the ground looking for a landmine? So the powers that be at the time said, yeah, we can, let's do it, challenge accepted. And that's how the program was created. So and we did it. Our certification tracks I mean, we did so many in the UK before we even deployed to Bosnia. Once we got to Bosnia, we had a whole nother different of like certification to be done in country, you know, as the dogs acclimatized to it.
Gotcha.
And there was this really cool place down in the south of Bosnia called Trebinja, and we'd go down there and had all. I mean, it's a like absolutely beautiful scenery, and you get down there and there's this village, and basically everybody in that village is now gone, and you know, from the genocide. So the village has been turned into these UN like minefields, like training minefields for canine. Oh. So we'd go down there, and it's this massive valley, and yeah, I mean, absolutely beautiful. And old Tito, who used to be the Yugoslavian kind of premier, his summer home was down there as well, and that was abandoned. And so there's a bit of history down there, a bit of coolness. And right across the border is Dubrovnik. So we would have this like crazy, you know, like military lifestyle, and then we could pop across the border into Dubrovnik, and
Party.
It's like normal life again. It was crazy. Yeah. It was, but it was cool at the same time. Yeah.
Wow. And then how soon after your deployments there did you start your anti-poaching? I'm sure I'm fast forwarding quite a bit, but what was that? How much time was that?
No, it was a long time. I mean, that was early on in my career in Bosnia. So that was actually, that was my second deployment, Bosnia. So it was, early days. And then, so I finished that, and I, you know, did some other bits and pieces. I went to Germany for a bit, went to Northern Ireland, and, you know, Northern Ireland was a really tough environment to operate in. And, I was going through some tough times personally. And I just, you know, I've always been a big fan of Africa, and I missed home. I mean, that's what it comes down to. You know, I was still young, and I didn't think I was at the time, but I missed home, and, you know, I'd had enough of wet, muddy weather, and was, you know, like, okay, maybe it's time for me to look at doing something else. And so I got out, went back to Zimbabwe, and then I started contracting in Iraq, like everybody else did who got out, you know, go get the big salary in Iraq, and did that. And while I was there, you know, I one of those guys, you know, I like to try and stay as humble as I possibly can, mate. And
don't do it.
But you know, we've got good at, you know, I like to think my peers and we have good initiative, and we don't like to say no, and we challenge ourselves. And I got over then the program I was supporting was terrible, and I just thought people are going to get killed. These dogs shouldn't be operational. There was a whole lot of you know, like deficiencies that were going on. But anyway, I managed to secure some new training areas in Baghdad International Airport. So Saddam Hussein's old aircraft and all these like blown up buildings and stuff, I like basically took them over, and they became my training ground. And the US Army engineers heard about it, and I was put in touch with a lad, and he wanted to, you know, come out and do some training. I remember the first time they came out, I kind of sent them like a pin on a map and said, I'll meet you there at like 1500 or whatever it was. And nobody pitched up, and they were like, you're outside the wire. And I was like, yeah, I am, dude. Like, that's where we're working. And they couldn't believe it. You know, I was there, this like, you know, little white dude in Iraq all by myself. And they were just amazed that I was kind of doing that. Anyway, eventually they got the confidence and the clearance, I guess, to come out, and we had great training days and good times. And I got an email from this organization, and it was like some Nigerian prince type scenario, offering me a job in the US. And at first I was like, delete. And then a few weeks later, another email came through, and I was like, this is weird. And I spoke to my old man, and, you know, he was like, have you replied to it? I said, no, it sounds just like weird. It's too Gucci. And so he said, respond to it. What do you got to lose? So I did. And it was this organization in the US that was offering me a job to come over to the States to help, you know, with the military's, you know, training program. So I got basically the first time in my life, I got headhunted, didn't know how to deal with it, didn't know how to negotiate a salary, didn't know how to, I didn't even know where Missouri was. You know, I knew what the Hollywood sign was and the Statue of Liberty. You know, that's literally my like kind of like knowledge and geography. So I came over to the US, got to Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. And for any, you know, military listeners listening, they're going to be going, oh, shame. Because it is, I mean, they call it Fort Lost in the Woods. It's honestly absolutely terrible. My girlfriend, now my wife, came over, and I remember I landed, got to Waynesville, Missouri. That's where my little hotel was. And I'm walking around. I went to Walmart. Never been to Walmart in my life before. And I was like, wow, it's so big. This is amazing. Look at it.
Right.
Cool. And I like walked around. There was Christmas decorations everywhere. And it was like July.
Right.
And I was like, oh my, this is, wow. And I like called her on the phone. I said, and she's a big Christmas person, you know. And I said, oh, you'll be amazed. There's Christmas decorations everywhere. And she's like, what now? And I was like, yeah.
July.
And she came over like 2 weeks later, everything been sold out, you know, classic.
Right.
And they were moving on to like Easter. And yeah, and she got there and she couldn't be, she goes, I thought you said there was Christmas decorations. And I was like, well, I promise you they were. And it was we were just so confused and taken back and like in this remote middle of nowhere place. And this position came open in San Antonio and they were like, do you want to go down to Texas? And I'm, hell yeah, I'll go down to Texas. You know, let's go see what it's like. Yeah. You know, I thought I was going to be over here for a couple of years. Yeah. And so, yeah, I went down there and that was a good move. That's basically kind of like what got me on the path that I'm on now in the US. Right. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I've loved every second of it. And that program down, there's a specialized search dog program. And it was a program designed to counter the IED threat. And this was, you know, kind of at the peak of Afghan, not even the peak, just before the peak of Afghan. And, you know, guys were getting hurt and killed and it was just bad times. And General Petraeus said he wanted basically a detection dog with every patrol to counter the IED threat. And they threw billions of dollars at countering the IED threat. And at the end of all this money they spent, Petraeus still said the dog's still the best thing out there. So I'm a big believer in dogs. And they've served me well, that's for sure. I left school when I was 16 years old, mate. So, you know, they've kind of given me a career. Me too. So I've been very fortunate and very blessed with it.
Do you have dogs? Were you like a dog lover as a kid? Did you have dogs growing up?
Yeah, always had dogs growing up, but like not working dogs or anything like that.
Pets.
I remember going on a I had personal pets, but I went on a bird shoot once and they had these pointers and man, that blew me away. I was like, man, watching these dogs work. And I never knew you could get a dog to run so fast. My dogs are all these like overfed fat Labrador inbreds. Right. And now I'm seeing like a proper working dog. But I actually, to go back a little bit, when I joined the British Army, my old man wasn't happy about it, but I didn't really have a choice. So he said, join the army, you know, but you have to get a trade. So I joined up as a mechanic and I was going to be a Class A mechanic and I hated it. I was stuck inside, you know, the Adderall hadn't kicked in enough and whatever. So yeah, I basically was going to leave and go back to Zimbabwe. I was still 17 years old. Oh, wow. It's like really young, you know, and I had no idea what I was doing and completely overwhelmed, went through basic, all that stuff. But then I met a dog handler and just by chance, my OC was a Zimbabwean guy too. And he said to me, you know, why don't you just give it one more chance? Because he knew what was going on in Zimbabwe with all the trouble and everything. And and I said, look, I met a dog handler. It was pretty cool. You know, maybe I can do something like that. So that's how I got into dogs. Like, I promise you, there was no, I want to be a dog trainer, like desire. Right. And you hear these stories of guys like I had, I had Benji when he was, a puppy and I was 6 years old and we went out chasing squirrels and I had nothing like that, mate. It was, but what I do remember clearly is when I had to go to like basically where the dogs are trained for a week to do a selection because they just didn't let anybody in. And I went up there and I was blown away. I was really impressed. There was a guy they called Tony Bird and I'm still in touch with him today. He was a corporal and he was working some tracking dogs and some detection dogs. And basically I was a skivvy to help him out for a week. That's how he looked at it. But he was really informative. And, where I'd just come from, the base I'd been at, a corporal was like God. So I was terrified of corporals, which was, it's not even like senior rank at all, but it was just the mentality. And there I had this corporal who was actually talking to me like a human being and, teaching me and leading me. And I was like, man, this is like, I like this place. Yeah. And then the dogs blew me away. So I think, in those days, I don't know what it's like anymore, but in those days, we all had a very similar sense of humor. We all had to go through a similar selection process. And I do think you have to be a certain type of individual to work with a dog. Mm-hmm. And, especially in those conditions that I've kind of like described. So we had a very, very tight, close-knit team. And that's why Blackie and I are still friends now. I see him probably once every 5 years or something silly. And I talk to him 2-3 times a week. It's a special group of guys that, I got to work with and, it's still ongoing, but, going forward back to the US, I got down to Texas there was no real off-leash detection program at the time. And that's what we set up, was an off-leash detection dog program for the military to go and do this counter IED stuff. And it was massively successful. So, yeah, I mean,
so IED dogs,
I've lost friends and stuff. And
so IED dogs are always off-leash?
No, not always. I'm not going to say always off-leash. So like so there's different capabilities. The military's got an acronym for everything, obviously. So that was a specialized search dog, SSD. And then there's another one called an IDD, which is an IED detection dog, which is like a Marine Corps program. Then there's TED, which is the Tactical Explosive Detection Dog, and that's another Army program. So they're all over the show, but they're all trained to like search a roadway at distance and go ahead of like a patrol. So if there's an IED buried in the road, then the dog will be able to detect it and indicate the presence of it, so the handler can, coordinate, keep everyone safe. But prior to that, guys were walking in on a 6-foot leash, and guys were getting hurt and losing limbs, and dogs were getting killed. And I don't mean like hundreds or anything like that, but it was still bad. But those same dogs, they'll search a vehicle on leash.
Right. So
distance. If some
distance, I got you.
Yeah, it's just a standoff detection tool. So the dog, look, at the end of the day, some people are going to listen to this and hate it, but at the end of the day, in that kind of world, the dog's a tool. The dog is there to provide a service. Yeah, we don't want anything to happen to our dogs, but I would rather something happen to my dog than one of the guys with me. So my sister would hate hearing that, and she'd tell me, "What?" My sister would pick the dog over a person any day of the week. But but at the same time, we train the dog to such a level where you're not sending a dog in to get blown up. That's not what's going on. So the dog goes in, indicates passively, like a mine, and then you recall the dog. The dog comes back to the handler, and you've marked it, you've identified it. Hey, that pile of rubble over there, there's a device in that area. So we want to bypass it or blow it up, or whatever the SOPs dictate, and you move on, but nobody gets hurt.
Yeah. Well, because again, I think it's important, because I don't want to offend anybody, but when you're talking about military, you're talking about saving lives, you're talking about bringing the men and women of the service back home in one piece. And I think the best way to do that, the safest way to do that, is to use a dog, because a dog's indicating factors, their training, their abilities are so much better than anything else that exists on this planet today.
There's hands down, there's nothing as good as a dog to counter that IED threat. Honestly, they spent billions and billions of dollars, trying to replicate the nose, trying to replicate the capability, they had remote control Humvees doing stuff, and nothing worked like the dog. It's compact, it's mobile, it's efficient. You can teach it a new odor pretty quickly if there's a new threat. And it's got a brain at the same time, so it's not like just some mechanical on-off thing. It's interactive, and you can use the air, the wind, and there's so much that goes into like a good operational search. And I think a good handler, they'll demonstrate that with their dog versus a guy actually doesn't know what he's doing, and he walks in on a 6-foot leash to go and search a pile of rubble.
So let's take that and the amazing work that dogs do to save lives, and talk about the other lives that you're helping dogs to save. And that is not only the lives of the animals in Africa, but also the people of the villages and stuff like that. I think it's a really important piece that people don't look at. How did you what was your first soiree? Like I said, for me, if I would have gotten into the anti-poaching thing, and I had such a passion for it, to this day, still when I talk to you, I'm jealous that you get to go to these amazing countries and take dogs and be around. I mean, I think just being born in Zimbabwe, you would attest to that. The first time I landed in Nairobi and I smelled the air, there's an energy, a charge to your body, and it sounds stupid. I mean, whoever doesn't get this will think I'm an idiot, and that's fine. But there's an energy that I got the minute I landed in Africa that was, and again, Africa, Kenya, that was incredible, that I've never felt that in my life anywhere I've visited, and I've visited quite a few places. How did you, coming from Zimbabwe, leaving, building a career and really making something out of yourself, get this itch to go, wow, you know what, maybe I can go back, and visit and work and help the countries around you, the countries around Zimbabwe? Yeah.
Basically what happened, when I became, so I'm a US citizen now, became a US citizen, I always wanted to set up my own company. So I set up Invictus Canine, and I was basically going to jump in on law enforcement, like local and state law enforcement, and train guys up, in North Carolina and surrounding states. And that was the big 5-year plan, I guess. And then some folks at the Army Research Office asked me to come out. They were doing some research in South Africa. And I thought, okay, let me go out there. It's basically a free ticket, and I can go see Mum, in Zimbabwe. So just like a little, quick regional flight, go see her, catch up. And so I did. And NC State were doing a bunch of different, like they were doing research on elephants and detection. So there's elephants in Botswana that they like migrate from Botswana through into Namibia and into Angola, and they navigate these minefields, and they get through the minefields where there's other like species of animals that are getting blown up, and people are wondering like, how's this happening? So I don't know how it works exactly, but there's the US military has this like kind of research wing, and they were looking at like, if an elephant can detect TNT and landmines, then we need to know, is it something that can be like some kind of like biodetection tool that can be replicated? And that's kind of like how they went into it. So I went out there and I got to meet some cool people training elephants to find TNT. And these elephants were finding it no problem 100% of the time. And it was all clicker training, and the elephant would lift its leg up off the ground when it found the target. And it was, I think it was an 8-hole variable, and one variable had the target in, and then the others were distractors and controls and whatnot. So there were no issues with it. They were doing a great job. Then
so actually, hang on, I got to stop on that. This is the most fascinating thing I've heard in any podcast. An elephant is trained to detect on explosives.
Yeah. So it was a proof of concept. So it was, they had basically a piece of wood that was elevated off the ground, and the elephant's trunk would go into each can along the way. Yeah. And in that can would have different scents, and he would indicate the presence of TNT and the correct one. But there were several elephants. It wasn't just one. And it's a herd of elephants that had, they were all problem elephants, and I don't want to say domesticated. You can't domesticate a wild animal, but they've been, desensitized to people, and people would do these interactive things with them. So it was a way, to cover cost to look after these elephants. Right. And somehow people heard about it, and can you train the elephant to do it? Yeah, come on in. And obviously like the funding helps keep the elephants going and gets them their food and their veterinary and all that kind of stuff, and protects them. So they go through all of that stuff, but the elephants are getting trained the whole time to do it. Coincidentally, at the same time I was there, and I've watched dogs like do lineups all the time, and so I'm watching these elephants do it, and it's the same thing. I know it's an elephant, and that's cool, but it's cool for the first 5 or 6 times. Yeah. But like when you're getting to 30, 40 times, it's getting a little repetitive and a little boring. And I'm like, let's go do something cool with the elephants. So I went out with a friend of mine, Mikey, and he was one of the elephant trainers, and he said, I said, let's do some tracking, And he's like, okay, let's train the elephant to track. So off we went, and we took the one female off, and we were using elephant quarters, like at a sort of, when you get a kid's football game or something. Yeah. And we taught this elephant to track, and its reward at the end of the track was the oranges that were cut up. And so we took the elephant's handler, keeper, and he would lay the track and hide in the bush, and the elephant would come, he'd jump out the bush and give the elephant the oranges. Yeah. And this it was pretty cool. And so, it was like 3 trials, and this elephant was like, oh, okay, I got this game. Yeah. And then so now we're running behind the elephant on the ground, like following it, and I'm terrified of elephants. Like when they're that close, it's like, this is not normal for me. And this is before I was in my conservation work and anything. So we chasing the guy jumps out the bush, and he's like, good girl, to the elephant. And the elephant's like, brrr, ears up, trunk gets a fright. And then he rewards it. So he did that 3 times. The elephant's like, got it. I've got to charge the bush. So we think we're training this elephant to like track. So the elephant's tracking, and then towards the end of the track, it's like, okay, I'm near the bush. Now charge. And all of a sudden, this elephant just started like picking up speed and like running at these bushes. And we yelled at the guy to stand up, but she stopped right at the bush, and he jumped up, and he trusted her, and he gave her the oranges. And I was like, okay, we've got to stop this now. And but it was incredible to watch how quickly they learn. And they have like one of the best kind of like sensory devices on the planet for an animal. So it's way better than dogs, way better than anything.
Dogs. Yeah, that's what I heard too. Because they smell water. Yeah. They smell water miles away.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much we don't know about them. They're fascinating.
So
you
amazing.
know,
So amazing.
seismic communication in their feet.
Right.
And I mean, it's incredible what they can do.
Yeah, the
You know,
communication, that's another piece. That's that seismic communication, because I read about that, where when they pound their feet on the ground, they're actually sending messages to elephants miles and miles away.
Yeah, so they don't know what's triggering it. I mean, I don't know if you remember hearing the rumbling around the African elephants. So like when you had a herd of elephants, when you hear them, they're like, it's a rumbling sound that's coming out of their belly. It's like, boop, boop,
Yeah.
boop, boop, boop. And when they make that sound, that's the sound people suspect, I guess, is what's traveling these great distances, and they feel it in their feet on the ground, especially the desert elephants in Namibia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's the sound coming out of their stomachs that's actually getting into the ground, and
Yeah,
they're
but
picking up from their palms?
yeah, and the base of their feet is if you ever see an elephant's foot, I'll send you a picture of one, but
Please.
you know, one of me holding these elephant feet up, and it's you can see they're super soft, and they look like the only way I mean, they got cracks, obviously, like, you know, anything that walks around barefoot, but compared to the rest of their body, it's super smooth. And I remember looking at it the first time and feeling it. It's almost like a doctor's stethoscope, you know. So I can totally picture it like being some kind of a tool that would, like, you know, pay attention more at least. But they, you know, they're the most sure-footed animal on the planet, and you should see some of these hills they go up and down. It's amazing, you know.
Wow. Yeah, I think it's just a fascinating.
Yeah.
The first time I saw an elephant come next to our truck, I was like, wow. And you know, I've seen the big males, you know, in Moscow. I mean, the energy, the vibe that just comes off of that animal, it's humbling. It's
super
like truly
cool.
humbling, right?
Yeah.
So now going from that, I mean, so that was, what an amazing experience to have that. How did you say, wow, we've got to save these animals? I mean, because your conservation work
Not at all,
for
mate.
everything. No.
Yeah, not at all. So I'll back up a little bit. So I went from that project, I went home, back to Zimbabwe, see mum, and, you know, all that kind of stuff, see some mates, and, you know, misbehave a little bit. And then my grandfather was in national parks in Zimbabwe. So I kind of grew up, my uncle was in national parks, and I grew up around, you know, folks that, I mean, truly love the bush and pale in comparison to my passion. I mean, my passion pales in comparison to them. I mean, it was a lifelong dedicated service. Yeah. And, you know, I'd always loved going for walks in the bush with my grandfather, and, you know, it's always been a part of me. So when I go back to Zimbabwe, I want to, you know, experience those things, and I don't want to do the tourist thing. I don't want to go where the you know, the dog and pony show is. You know, I want to go to, like, I want to be alone, man, you know, and really, truly, like, just feel it and enjoy it. So yeah, I try to do that as much as I can when I'd go back. But in my mind, I had immigrated out of Zimbabwe. That was it. I was done. Africa and I were finished. I had no future there, you know, and I was going to work in the US. And while I was in Zimbabwe, a friend of my mother's was like, asked my mum, hey, listen, there's someone here from Kenya. You know, they're funding some dog programs, and they were wondering if Jay could come around and just talk to us about it. And coincidentally, just before I set up Invictus Canine, the previous company I worked for, I was working on the combat tracker dog program. And, you know, basically we're training dogs to track in Arizona in the desert for pre-deployment to Afghanistan. Wow. And I learned so much out of that program, you know, from a training perspective. You know, I trained tracker dogs in Northern Ireland and the UK, and then North Carolina. And all of a sudden we're in, you know, Arizona, and there was a pretty steep learning curve for me. And yeah, so now I'm back in Africa, and these guys are, you know, paying for a program to get set up, and I'm a bit of a, you know, bit crazy with my phones and my GoPros and stuff, and I try and take a lot of stuff because, you know, I want to have good memories when I'm old, because I know I'll probably forget everything, and show my kids and that kind of stuff. So I had all these combat tracker dog videos, but I do genuinely use them as, like, to review handling. So if a handler's working, I'll video it, and then afterwards I say, listen, this is why you're I don't know if I can swear. I probably can't swear. This is why you're an idiot. And, you know, I can show him. See, I'm struggling now trying to find a vocabulary because I can't swear. Right. Apologize, mate.
But cool.
So anyway, I had all these videos and stuff, and I showed them off, and he showed me this, like, proposal of this program that was getting set up. And there's a few things that, you know, weren't right, and I wouldn't say were wrong, but I just said I would do this differently. I'd do this differently. I don't know why that cost so much. I'd want more info on this if I was you, and what's their certification standards, and just like basic stuff that's,
Yeah.
from my background, we did take it for granted, but out there, it's the Wild West and anybody can get away with anything. And there's a lot of showboaters out there that say they can do stuff. And I've got, there's guys that work out there that are friends of mine, were friends of mine that are doing stuff now. And they're, trying to like run off my kind of success and the programs that we've set up. And it's infuriating, but you know what? It's fine. Each to their own type thing. There's a good quote like, work in silence and, let success be your noise. So that's my kind of philosophy, and move forward with that. And
I like that. Work in silence and let success be your noise.
Yeah.
I want to remember that. I like that.
That's a good one. So I meet this guy, and I was telling him about how I train dogs, and I showed him the videos in the desert and everything. And he was like, man, this is brilliant. If you're interested in setting up a dog program here, let me know and I'll fund it. And I was like, oh, cool. Like literally no plan to set up a conservation program. And a friend of mine had introduced me to a lady at the Tiki Highwood Trust, which is a big pangolin, it's an organization that rescue pangolins and do different things with pangolins. Hugely successful, and they've done a really good job. So I chatted with her, and she said, oh, you need to meet these guys from Gonorrhea in Zimbabwe. And I was like, okay. So this was literally the next day after I met this donor. Mm-hmm. And I meet basically the project manager for this national park. And he said, I'll be looking for a vendor. And I said, oh, okay, well, let me talk to you about what I've done. And, if you're interested, maybe we could work. Anyway, by the end of it, he just said, I've been looking for a vendor for 2 years and can never find the right person. And this is exactly what we've been looking for. If we can find the funding, we'll set it up. And I was like, well, I just met this dude yesterday, and he says he'll fund a program for me if you want it. So can I put you guys in touch? And he's like, yep. And I thought, man, this conservation works easy, like,
right.
Like this, I don't know why everyone's so worried. Like everyone's giving you money and giving you work. So like within 3 months, I was back in Zimbabwe with 2 dogs. We went with 2 dogs and 2 handlers there as a trial. Mm-hmm. And it was successful. We were doing some good training. And look, I'll be completely honest. I was completely in the deep end. I kind of thought I knew what the problem was. And, like the first kind of scenario that was presented to me having coffee with the guy who ran that program, he just said to me, they just lost a few elephants. These guys had come across the border from Mozambique. They shot the elephants. Gunshots were heard. The rangers reacted to it. They got there to the elephants. They could see the ivory had been removed. And they couldn't find footprints to follow. They looked and they looked and they looked and they looked. And eventually they were like, we can't find it. And somehow a couple of days later, they found footprints and they followed them. And these poachers had shot the elephants, taken the ivory, and they'd climbed up this. It's called a kopje, which is like a big rocky hill type thing, but it's pretty isolated. So they're on top of this kopje watching the rangers the whole time. And it was within 3 kilometers. So within 2 miles, 1.5, 2 miles. And they were there the whole time. And I just said to him, like, honestly, like I could train a dog to track from that carcass and it would take you in that direction. And then you would know where they are, and you could do your cord and you could set it up. And, and what I was telling him made sense from a tactical perspective. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, I'm thinking 3 kilometers and stuff. And I remember the first walk I went on, first patrol I went on was 11 kilometers. And I was like, man, these guys are walking 11 kilometers for a morning patrol. These tracks are going to get big. And then I started, once I was there with these dogs, I started looking more into like some of this distance that they're doing. And these poachers are walking 60 kilometers to hit a animal. And I was like, okay, I need to up my game here. And if you asked me back then, can you train a dog to do ABC? I would have said no. And I would have called that person out in a classroom full of people and said, you're lying. And with the stuff that we're doing now is genuinely, I didn't believe we'd be able to do it. But there's so many small parts of it that have made it successful. It's not me,
Yeah.
It's the guys I work with, and honestly, I've just been lucky. I really have. I've Stoops talks about all the time now. He plagiarizes everything. I'm exactly the same way. I've been around some really good people, and they've taught me some good things. And that obviously we've all had to learn on our feet at times, and but without that grounding, without those guys out there that have helped us out and put us into those positions where we are, it would never have worked out. So I'm massively grateful for the Tony Birds and the Blackies and the Stoops and all those kind of guys that I've met along the journey, and they've helped me out. And I'm genuinely like, I go through things. I worked with a good mate of mine, Amanda, and we're in the British Army together. She's in North Carolina now. She works at a big vendor. She's a phenomenal trainer. And I spent some time in the US Army's combat tracker dog program with her. And I can remember one day sitting in a truck and it was just bucketing down with rain. And we're both sitting in the truck. All the windows are steamed up and we're miserable wet. Dogs are miserable wet. And she's like, right, let's go. And I was like, absolutely, let's do it. So off we went out and we started training, and we were laughing about it afterwards. And when I see her now, we talk about it. But I learned so much about tracking from her, which set me up for success in Arizona. And so if I hadn't spent that time in the truck talking to her, when it's raining and, I would have lost out in Arizona. We would have failed that program. Those dogs wouldn't have been successful in country overseas. And everything's just kind of like put me in place for what I'm doing now. And I've just been very fortunate.
But the anti-poaching dog, that's your main thing you're doing now, right?
Yeah, so I would say the majority of my work is like the conservation work. I'm very passionate about it. I love it. There's not.
How could you not?
I mean, when I'm over there, there's not one day where obviously there's days where I'm like, what am I doing? Like especially if we've lost something and we didn't catch a guy, then that's a different type of mental state. But there's a silver lining to everything, and but I do have work in the US. I teach courses. I teach tracking courses and that kind of stuff. I did a really cool course in May up in Colorado. So we were tracking up at 10,500 feet, in the Rockies, and it was fantastic, and then we're doing that. Then we're back down like just north of Denver in a town, tracking through like malls and stuff, and just a huge diverse range of like environments. So that was cool. But and then I also do counterterrorism work for the Department of Homeland Security. So I've just finished a gig now up in Maryland, and we were assessing local and state law enforcement for detection. Basically,
I want to say that for another podcast, but I want to go back to Africa. So when you do, and I keep calling them anti-poaching dogs because I think that's such a huge piece. Walk me through this. Are you looking for, or do you have two different situations? Like one thing would be obviously to get dogs to detect the ivory, the pangolin, the rhino horn, or whatever, and the other part is to train dogs to find the guy who did the bad thing and get that guy. That's two different spheres of what you're doing. Am I correct?
Correct. But every dog does both. Okay. So I train all my dogs to do both capabilities.
Okay. Is there ever a confusion
so I actually... Not at all, mate. It's two different... they completely understand. I would say the bread and butter is tracking. Look, I think... My opinion, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of dog people out there that may differ in opinion, but I think if you've got a dog that tracks really well, it'll detect no problem when it comes to doing search work. But if you've got a good detection dog that you've had for a couple of years, it's not necessarily going to be a good tracker dog. So, I cheat to an extent where when I go and procure dogs for this work in Africa, I don't go and just pick a handful of dogs to do a good room search or whatever. I go and I test the tracking side of it, and I want to look at the trainability of the animal, the natural ability to track. And it's a really quick test. It's not that complicated, but with that test, I can see in the dog that this dog knows how to use its nose. And then I'm looking at stuff like size, age, obviously determination. There's other bits that goes into it. But if they show me a drop of weakness in tracking, I don't even look at them again. So I'm taking a dog that has really good natural instinct for tracking, and then I'm teaching him to track further. That's what I do that's different.
And your tracks are
big
long.
Distance tracks.
Like, give me a distance.
My test track is 25 kilometers.
20, so that's like 14, 15 miles.
I think it's like 18 miles if I want to get exact.
Miles.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's my test track. Yeah.
And how fresh is that track? Like how new is
that track? So I lay the track. So the test track is it's a like blind for the team. They have no idea where they're going. So it's a finished team. Obviously, this is not like a daily thing.
Right.
And Yeah, so I basically break into the park and I disappear, and they've got to
Yeah.
come find me. And I move through the park. There's a predetermined plan, obviously.
Right.
There's from a safety perspective that a few people are aware of.
For sure.
And typically, what I'm going to do is follow historical poachers' movement. So I'm doing a patrol effectively at the same time as the team is going to follow up. But I change my footwear. I'm going to be wearing local shoes, what the poachers are wearing. So when they react, they come there. They don't know it's Jay. Then they're like, They along the way they're like, okay, this is Jay, and actually makes them more hungry because they love catching me, because it's full on. You arrest me, you better be prepared to like have a bit of a punch up. Like it's not. I'm not just gonna like willingly give up. A poacher's gonna like, have a bit of a scuffle with you. They don't want to go away. And
do the dogs?
And I've done it.
Do the dogs like work with apprehension as well, or do they stand down and
No, we don't do apprehension. So a lot of the poachers are armed with machetes, spears, obviously shotguns, right? Different weapons. We've got a couple of dogs that are trained to engage. However, that's used in a very, very kind of controlled situation where we have complete control of the ground. Most of the time, if you think of the distance we're tracking, we're following the guys for so long. I have to focus my training plan on tracking. The guys are training every single day with those dogs. If I add in like patrol work, my personal opinion is every time you add in patrol work, we're all A-type personalities, and that's the cool stuff. Let's go and do bite work. Yeah, and, we're going to take a bite, and we're doing it all day long, and it's cool. It really is. It's like that is the like the alpha male challenge. I'm going to fight a dog, and I'm going to let the dog win, and I'm going to do everything I can to like make him stronger. And you can spend hours doing that, and he still needs work. But most of the time, my dogs don't get to the end of the track where the poachers are. We're giving information, and the vast majority of time. So we're on track and we're following, and we know they're a kilometer ahead of us, but our cutoff teams will arrest them, or whatever the outcome is. That there's other parts of what we do. So I'm not just teaching like follow a dog. I'm teaching putting an OP up, putting an ambush over here, making sure we're intercepting comms with the aircraft, comms with the chopper, just make sure everybody's like got water, and it's just it's the whole shebang, and make sure the ops room knows what's going on so he can relay information to everybody. And there's a bit of coordination required. So the training it's all about that. It's that end product of putting all those parts together on that 25k track. So that's typically going to be two dogs that do the 25k primary and secondary, and the secondary will jump in. And like a scenario I'll give you is I laid a track, and the guys did a good job about anticipating my movement, and they put an OP up and actually clocked me. And I was like going through this like river dry observation post.
Okay, so that's where they'll keep an eye on the movement of the poacher, the potential poacher.
Yeah. So basically, two guys will go up on a hilltop in an elevated position, pair of binos, telescope, that kind of a thing, and they'll be just looking to see if they can see any movement. A lot of it's given from wildlife. So we've caught poachers because of giraffe. I mean, giraffe will just stare at people. And they just stare and stare and stare. And you just watch their heads. You can triangulate right there. You send the team in and bang, you got them.
They're amazing.
Baboons. A lot of people who've traveled to Africa will hear baboons, and they're very habituated to people in these camps that they go to. But in the bush, in the real bush, they see people and they fear people, and you'll hear it. You'll hear them screaming and whatnot. And that's another indicator for us that someone's there. So we just pay attention to the surroundings and what's going on in the bush. And so I'll send a couple of guys up a hilltop. They're going to look for any kind of like activity, and then they'll report if they see anything. But it's pretty much just a boring, just lie there and look, and most of the time they don't see anything. But these guys did see me on this one training event, and the backup dog came and bunny hopped basically in front of the initial dog to try and cut the tracks again to pick up. And once the dog picks up tracks and they start following me, that could be 5 kilometers in front of the first dog. Then that first dog will retire, get refreshed, get a vehicle, a helicopter, whatever, move into a better position. So it's all about just it's a chess game, and you want to get your pieces in the right place. That's all it comes down to, and it's just understanding the ground, understanding the threat, understanding the environment and how the poachers are working that environment and what the animals are doing, and just putting your fishing net up so you can catch the fish, basically.
Yeah. So the two questions I have for you, and I kind of know the answer to it, but I want to kind of make it more public. One is, who are the poachers? Are they like really refined, organized crime type people, or are they just locals who are just trying to make a couple bucks?
So basically, there's two types of poachers. You have your subsistence poachers, and a lot of these communities around these national parks are really poor. So you've got like hungry people. And, you know, I've said this so many times in the past, but like, what would I do for my kids? I would 100% go outside and shoot a deer if it meant I needed to feed them. And I don't care about a tag. I don't care about the consequences if they're hungry. Right. Yeah. So it's that people are doing that, you know, and I'm sympathetic towards that cause. And that's, you know, our job is anti-poaching. Our job is to stop people coming into the park and stop people, you know, from killing animals that they're not allowed to kill. Right. So it's a really tough kind of like, once you start getting into the grey, it gets a little complicated. And we've arrested kids before, 15, 16-year-olds who are going out to go and get like a small little animal, like a duiker, you know, it's really small, and they take it home for, you know, to feed a family of 12, you know. Sure. And so we scare them. We don't arrest them, obviously, you know. Look, I'm a bit of a big softy at times, but if that person's there and he's got 200 snares and he's trying to harvest meat to sell at the local market, okay, you're fair game, pal. We're coming after you. And so those are your like subsistence type poachers. Then obviously you've got your more organized crime, you know, and it's just straight up cash. So they're going after your elephant, your rhino, your pangolin, any kind of like endangered animal that you can think of, you know, turn on Nat Geo and whatever's the rarest animal, that's what they're hunting. And, you know, obviously it's organized crime. So it's getting shipped out the country. It's going through the airports, through the, you know, the harbors and whatnot. So yeah, we're trying to just anticipate that and provide support to the intelligence agencies and ensure that, you know, we can make them think twice about coming in. And what I will say is you also get a hybrid version of those. So there's a huge like influence of like investment in Africa. So the West has pulled out a lot of these countries, and you know, like there's a lot of like Chinese funds that have gone in, and you know through various different, you know, cultural beliefs, you know, whatnot. I'm not like for or against it, whatever. You know, there's value in some of these animals like rhino horn, ivory, and it's getting exported over to mainland China, and it's illegal in those countries now. However, it's not in other countries. So a lot of the shipments that are going over are going through like Thailand or Indonesia and whatnot. But you know, you talk about some of the stuff that's going over there, it's absolutely insane. Really is crazy.
Because that's what I thought. So I think that there's probably a big contingent of poor people who get 20, 30 bucks, or if that, I mean, maybe $5 to go out and poach for the day or for the week. And then they turn it over to the organized crime. And then it's obviously exacerbated so profits, right?
You look, I would say that's like, you know, 1-2% of the high value targets. So that's your you know, rhino horn, ivory. That's you know, that's an opportunistic situation. So someone's come across a carcass, perhaps natural death. They harvest the ivory, then they go and try to find a buyer. Most of those guys get caught because the intelligence service is so good, and they're not a sophisticated poacher. But the organized crime, they are hiring, you know, sophisticated poachers. Well, they know what they're doing. And they've probably got some rangers like, you know, paid off, and they know where the patrols are going and where they aren't going. And I mean, you can just Google like corruption in Kruger and on Google, and it'll come up with so many examples of, you know, like, you know, guys that work for national parks that are like providing information to, you know, syndicates. And they've obviously been caught and stuff. There's some notorious situations of like wildlife veterinarians darting rhino and then selling the rhino horn, but getting caught, you know. And it's good. But not just in Kruger. I'm just like everywhere.
Oh, I know, you know, all over,
across every country.
Which countries do you go to primarily for the anti-poaching?
Primarily, at the moment, it's kind of like the Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, Namibia. But we've got programs in Zambia, Zimbabwe. We're trying to set up a new program in Botswana and help them out. And then, Uganda is another one where we're trying to like kind of get some influence, I guess. So we've got, I'm about to go to overseas now and putting 4 more dogs into another program. So we'll have 40 dogs in place across the continent.
So two things I want to do, and I want to just interject it in this part of the podcast. One is I want to put some links down below on the video podcast to any organization that you work with that could potentially somebody could donate to, so that that help would go to you and the dogs that you're working. Right. I wanted to put that down there. And the second thing I want to do, and I'm just going to put this public, I didn't tell you about this before. You said you need those GPS collars for the dogs, right?
Yeah. So you know the Alpha 100s?
Yeah. I'm gonna buy you
those
one.
help.
I'm gonna get you one. So that's gonna be my gift
Thanks,
to you.
mate. I appreciate that.
And I'm gonna talk about that with you once we get off this podcast. This is what you're doing is huge. It's just such a huge thing, because I learned also that, and I want to go back to the dogs. I mean, we're kind of getting off on a tangent with tourism and everything like that. There's such a way that the idea of shooting these animals is not necessary, right? That there's so much revenue that can come into these countries through ecotourism, right? Through conservation tourism, that these people, and a lot of times it's what you said, it's a 15-year-old kid. It's a guy who needs to feed his family. You know, they're starving. They have nothing to do. Or an elephant tracked across their field and ruined everything. So, or a lion went and ate their cow. And there's a lot of organizations helping that. I think it's important that we understand we have some compassion for the people of these countries, which are destitute. Some of these people are completely destitute and they're starving to death. And they're thinking, well, if I go kill, whatever, a dick or whatever, I can eat it, and I can feed my family. But then there's this other side, which is really sick, this organized crime, which exports these products, like stupid things like a rhino horn or ivory tusk or a pangolin skins or whatever. And these animals are hunted. And if you've ever seen one in the wild, I mean, I've encouraged every person I know, if you only do one thing in your life, don't do anything. Don't take any days off. Don't ever take a vacation until you can go to Africa and see these amazing, it's like nothing else, you know?
No, I agree. Yeah.
So what kind of dogs do you mainly, and I think my misconception was when I talked to you that they were going to be, like hounds, like bloodhounds, real strong track hounds. You're not using those dogs. You have a very unique program and proof of concept that you're using. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I've got a mixed breed program, but a primary breeds are going to be Malinois and German Shepherds. Mm-hmm. But I do procure smaller, lightweight animals. And if you think of the Olympics, the guys that are running the 100 meters versus the guys that are doing the marathon, right. I need a marathon runner. I don't need 100. I don't need a big, massive dog that's going to take a guy down and dominate the guy. And I need that dog that's going to be able to track through a variety of environments, be mentally sound and robust enough to negotiate like what that environment throws at them, and do that for an excessive amount of time, which is really unfair on the dog at times. But they want to do it, and obviously we've got a bunch of measures in place to protect them. But we've also got pointers, we've got Vizslers, Labradors, but majority are going to be your Malinois and your German Shepherds, and they tend to come on like kind of Slovakian lines.
Okay, I was going to ask you that. Okay, and do the Malinois or the German Shepherds more? How do they hold up in the weather?
Fine, honestly, it comes down to like my programs. We can get into the handler selection later, but I'm selecting physically capable people to come and work these dogs, and there's a big old selection process for it. But at the same time, there's lots of unemployment, so jobs are valuable, employment's valuable, and if a guy doesn't do his job, there's 100,000 other people that'll do it. So it's easy to find good, hardworking people who value what they're doing. Obviously, the trick is to find the social science of being able to get them to work within a unit of people who don't clash and with dogs. And in some of the most extreme situations possible on a day-to-day basis, like what we would take as like what we would do once in our life, they do every single day. And, and it's become normal for me too, going through the bush and doing these long foot patrols. But at the time when I first started getting into it, I remember I went for a walk in the airstrip right next to the kennels, and I was like looking for lion, like, oh my God, am I going to get murdered out here by a lion? And now we're going like way, I mean, off the beaten path. There's no roads within 10 kilometers of where we are.
Yep.
And I couldn't care less about lions. So like, obviously I'm desensitized to it, but the, you know, it's a pretty special dog that, you know, you're looking for, but it's not unique either. It's not like they're not out there. Right. Anybody can go and get the dog. Anybody with good experience can go and find the dog. The trick is I'm fortunate where I've been raised in Africa and I understand cultures, understand languages, understand the environments, you know, with my grandfather and my uncle, and, you know, just experiencing it. And, you know, it's like there's a lot of key ingredients that have helped me out. So the dog side of it is not the hard part for me. It's the people side of it. But I can make those guys go for a 10-kilometer run with their dog. And I could never do that with, you know, teaching a course to a bunch of cops over here. Right. Say, all right, guys, grab your dogs. We're going to go for a 1-mile walk. Yeah. Like, I'm just get my car with aircon and, you know, good to go. I got it, dude. You know, but they aren't doing long distance tracking. And so the fitness regime is very important to the program, to the dogs. And I was really lucky. I got to work with some cool people from Oklahoma State University for some of that off-leash detection stuff. And basically built an igloo at the kennel facility, and we could change the temperature inside from, I think it was minus 20 Fahrenheit to 120 Fahrenheit. So extreme temperature ranges. Wow. And we had these like $6 million man dogs, like Elizabethan collar, sealed off O2, CO2 tubes coming out of it. And we got unfit dogs. We put them on a treadmill and we saw, can they get fit, you know, and how quickly can they get fit? And it really like kind of opened our minds to, you know, what a dog can tolerate, and how, like, to take a dog that's, you know, in North Carolina and goes to North Carolina winter and goes to like Afghan summer, you know, what we can achieve with that, and how what that process is, and then also how quickly they can become unfit. That's probably the more important thing for me. You know, this is going to sound negative, but I like to use a negative. So I do handler selection, not to select a handler. I do handler selection to make sure the guy who shouldn't be a dog handler isn't there. It's the same with the dogs. So so it's all the process of elimination. And with the training side of it, it's all about you know, just that the incremental development, like what I did with the mine dogs, and but slowly but surely reinforcing good solid behavior and making sure the guys understand that. But the fitness piece is just as, like, it's integrated into what we're doing. It's not like, okay, guys, go for a run on Friday. It's every day you're doing something, you know, and I've got a list of things that the guys have to do every day. And it's not like a cop in the States who, you know, I don't know, they've got so many like OSHA things to worry about, and they've got to go and do their online training, annual training, and they've got to go to the range, and they've got to go pull people over for speeding, and, you know, and then they've got to go and train their dog. Whereas my guys, if you don't train your dog, you're done. So do your damn work, and let's go catch bad guys, and they'll do it. And I never have those conversations. I'm just saying, like, I could push it to that level.
Another thing I think
that's not true. I've had the conversation a couple of times, but it's you know, high standards.
There's an important piece in that too, because when you're talking about these rangers, these are people who are local villagers who you're giving jobs to, that when they have that job, they have an immense amount of pride. Like, I've met rangers, and they have this immense amount of pride. They're doing something positive. They're helping. They really want to do the right thing. And it deters them from ever turning to a life of crime. It shows them the value in their kids, the value of these animals, and the value of their culture. And they get to work with dogs, which is a whole thing. So, I mean, you're really attacking this from a multifaceted approach.
I think that the key to success is good management. And I'm not saying that's me coming in doing good management. You know, I'm working anti-poaching teams, and I'm you know, working in that kind of leadership role. It's a tiny part of the ecosystem of, you know, what right looks like. And but there's obviously management of these national parks that are doing a great job, and, you know, good leadership. You have good troops, and that's what I see. So, and I've been to parks where the leadership isn't good, and you can see that they've got a lot of internal issues. There's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of you know, I don't know, these they don't have wheels on the vehicles because the tires have all been stolen, you know, for the government vehicles. So they can't do vehicle patrols. They can't go on the boat because all the fuel got stolen out the boat. They can't use the radios because the solar panels got stolen. Wow. And there's only one group of people in that area that could steal it, and that's the staff at camp. It's not it's not like people are coming in through through the wildlife territory to steal it. So it's definitely all, you know, those situations are 100% happening a lot. But there's some great organizations out there that are doing some amazing work, and that's who I partner with. And I come in and help out with the anti-poaching. So the credit goes to them fully. It doesn't, obviously it's important for me to make sure the dog unit is successful. Otherwise, I would never get any other work. And it's like anything, it's cliquey. So everybody knows everyone, and I promise you, if you don't do a good job, the whole world will know about it. And
Real quick.
for me, I've got to go in there and smash it. Yeah.
So, and I got a question because you were talking, and this just popped into my head. Really, I thought about it years ago when I was in Uganda. In Rwanda. The idea of the dog. So you're getting these Malinois, which are highly prey-driven dogs, or German Shepherds and stuff like that. Now you're taking them out into the bush, and there is. I understand your target odor, your scenting, and all that stuff, but the distractions of of an animal running by, and the question is two-part. One, how do you get the dog to not be distracted by an animal that's never seen? I mean, it's how do you replicate it? You get a dog from Europe, you bring it in, and suddenly it sees an antelope running by, or a giraffe, whatever. One, how do you proof the dog for that? And two, how do you keep the dog safe in the presence of what you were talking about before, a lion that would obviously see it? And what about leopards? One of their favorite meals is obviously dogs, right? I mean, how do you keep the dog safe? Is it the presence of the rangers, of you, or what is it?
Yeah, it's look. I think it comes down to good training of the guys. So I've worked with guys who they see a wild animal and they start cocking weapons, getting ready to do like warning shots or shoot the animal, and I'm like, whoa, time out, guys, calm down. The thing's not going to touch us.
Right.
And then, but then also I've worked with other guys who are uber confident and they respect the animals and they've been around them. A lot of government positions are, people get into that job because they're related to somebody else. And the ranger positions in particular are coming from extended family in the cities. So you get these city slickers coming in doing these jobs, and they probably shouldn't be there in the first place. And the best people for those jobs are the guys from the local communities.
The locals.
So those are those good management programs. That's what they do. They recruit local. It reduces. The idea is it reduces poaching. Obviously, you're always going to have poaching if the government doesn't sort out those local communities. But that's never going to happen on that continent. Well, I shouldn't say it will eventually, but not in the next decade. It's going to need a lot of help. Yeah, but. Then, so like the guy's confidence around the animals is a huge part of it. We're never on our own. It's like sometimes we are. I shouldn't say we're never on our own, but it's 0.1% of the time. It's very unusual for us to be on our own. And then it's always going to be in a controlled environment. So the teams are going to be moving around 3, 4, 5-man teams minimum. And honestly, if it's during the day, lions are lazy. They're not going to do a thing. If you go towards them, you're going to get in trouble. So we identify them and we move away from them. And we're not trying to confront anything. We're there to protect them. We're not there to, take photos and get up close and personal and do things silly. Obviously, we run into situations where we do creep up on them accidentally, and like that video I sent you of that elephant. That was a classic night training. And he's coming down the path one way, we're going the other way, and all of a sudden you're like face to face with a young bull elephant who's a bully. But as long as you stay composed and you stay calm and you read the situation, it's all about behavior. You can deal with it. And I learned from some good guys like Hugo in Zimbabwe and Mikey, about like behavior. And they spend a lot more time in the bush than I have. And I've been doing this 7 years now, and they've been doing it for 20 odd years. So I'm absolutely going to pick their brains. But our training plan. So I procure the dogs, and they're green. They have had no training. I mean, obviously they ball crazy and they want their Kongs and all that stuff. So they fly out. I go to Holland. Really good friend of mine, Dutch canine center, Hank Verbeek. Got to tell you a story about Mike Reeve and Stoops. Actually, they were at Hank's place procuring dogs too.
With a can of
scribbling on my kettles. Buggers. Send me love notes on my kettles.
I can't believe they did that, right?
Kettles. I can, assholes. But
and then you showed up back there with
such a small world, eh? Yeah. But
any pictures of that, by the way?
So
of those
I think does is Mike. I think Mike.
Okay,
I remember him sending me photos. Yeah. So we dogs fly over. We get them over there, and yeah, I mean, they're unfit. They've come from a kennel environment in Holland where they've been tested over and over by different vendors or people who want to buy dogs and stuff. And, you know, the longest time they've ever worked in their life is, as you know, a couple of minutes probably, you know. So I've just seen natural ability. So the first thing I've got to do is acclimatize the dog. So the first couple of days is just walks. It's like we walk down the airstrip or down the road or in the bush. Yeah, well, you know, it's not like asphalt. There's no asphalt or anything like that. If there's elephant paths or anything like that, we'll walk down them. The elephant paths are like highways. They're super smooth. You can walk down them barefoot. You don't feel a thing. So we take the dogs down there, and obviously their pads crack because they've gone from that like kind of wet green grass of Holland to the driest, barest part of Africa. And but it's short, sharp, like incremental, like exercise periods. And I'll start doing like training exposures with them. So not detection, but on the tracking side. So I'll do like a 20-meter runaway and, you know, to a reward, and the dog will, you know, track to the reward. And obviously I've tested them and I know they can do it. But the biggest kind of like piece that we do is, I call it environmental training. And it's just exposing the dog to the environment through a road walk. And we just go for a 5K walk through the bush. Dog comes with, you know, and dogs that heel, you can teach to heel. They don't know it, but once they get a bit tired, they like tend to like kind of stick to the heel. So you can start rewarding that food reward. We use a bit of water reward as well. And we just, you know, get the dogs to, okay, this is cool, you know. And obviously while they're doing it, they're coming across lion and elephant and buffalo and birds and you name it. So and that's before they've even started training. So like, I'm a big believer in like, you know, home game for the dog, you know, not an away game. So if I train them in Holland or North Carolina and take them over there, I've got a fully trained dog that's going to get distracted against all those things that we just talked about. Whereas if a dog he gets raised in that environment and we're walking along and he's seeing it every day and then he's tracking through the same sense the next day, it's like, hey, this is what we do. And I've had one dog with issues.
How long does that usually take for the dog?
A month. Yeah.
So within a month, you can get them acclimated to all these scents and sounds of Africa, where they're kind of more benign, or those are irrelevant to them. Yeah, and they're wow. That's amazing.
That guy Tony Bird, I told you about in the beginning. He, you know, like there's times in your life where like the wires connect in your brain. Yeah, and I never forget we were talking, and I had a dog that was food aggressive in Germany, and this dog, every time I go in his kennel with a food pan, all he wanted to do was kill me. And I hated this dog. I didn't want to walk him. You know, I was just like, oh, it's such a pain. It's just every night. And he goes, well, give him more than one food bowl. And I was like, what? And he's going to really tear me up, you know. So we got 10 food bowls, and I split his food between 10 pans, and I put 10 pans on the ground. He didn't know what to do because I could pick one up, but he still had his food on the floor. And we were going through that. And I was just a young handler. And I was like, oh, my God, this is like makes so much sense. And it's the exact same thing that goes on in what we're doing over there. So it's not like they're coming across an elephant at the zoo in North Carolina. They kind of come across 200 elephants a day. They just immediately become desensitized to it. It's just so novel. It's done. And I had one of the pointers, super tracker dog. I actually procured him as a straight detection dog. Went over to Hank's place and, you know, he's like, I got a really stupid dog. And I'm like, every time you say that, you know. And so he shows me the stupid dog, and and he gets this pointer out. And look, I like pointers, but I never envisioned using one or anything like that. And I tested. This thing was a hunting fool in the room, and I mean, just beautiful. And I thought, man, this is actually a nice dog. And he was going to be a better price than the Malleys and the Sheps and stuff like that. As a single purpose, just straight up detection dog. So I called up the program and I said, listen, you guys are going to get 6 dogs. Let's get one of them just as a straight up detection dog. It's a really nice dog. I'm really impressed. It's a pointer. I don't even want to mess with tracking because they're such a birdy animal. And, you know, the other dogs will focus on the tracking with. And, you know, I find them quite diverse dogs where multiple people can handle a pointer, and they're just consistent, you know. Yeah. So that was my plan then. And anyway, I was doing the tracking testing, and this pointer smoked the tracking. So then I took him to a chicken farm and through the town center where all the pigeons are and the kids are and the fountains and all, you know, didn't give a damn about anything with a feather. So I was like, wow, there's something wrong with this dog, you know, genetically. But for me, perfect. I'll have him. Perfect, yeah. And so that dog can track like you can't believe, and big distance. He did I was in the DRC now a few months ago, and we did a 14-kilometer track, and he did the whole thing nonstop by himself. And I laid the track, and I thought, man, these guys, and it's raining, it's thick grass. You have like a 2 meter visibility. It's like pretty dangerous environment, buffaloes, hippos in the middle of the day on the paths. And I laid this track, and I thought, yeah, they're not going to be able to like catch me too quick. And I thought I was going to, get a lot further, and they smashed me at 14 kilometers. So, and that was the dog. He just took them, bam, the whole way. And it was pretty impressive. So yeah, he's a nice dog. But yeah, so that the early days is really the critical part of the success, I think. And because the training's short, sharp, and they're getting these longer walks, and there's, like all that stress and crazy kennel spinning and the barking, all that stuff goes out the window, because now they're like buggered. And but the training's short and sharp. So their fitness, the fitness improvement is incremental, just as the training is. I don't go and do a 25K track on day one. I'm doing a 50-meter track at the most. And, so their fitness just increases with it. And, we do, like in the British Army, we called it a tab, which is basically a forced march. And you put a backpack on your back and you go, and then it's a fast march. And, so I do that with the guys. A lot of these guys will go into the bush, and they'll have like a 8-ounce bottle of water, and that's them for 2 days. And I've got like 6 liters in a backpack, and food and all sorts, and radios. And these guys are just operators. That's just their environment. They're adapted to it. And but you put a backpack on their back, and they fall apart. So that's I throw stuff in like that, because they have to carry everything for the dog. They've got to carry water for the dog, food for the dog, and first aid kit for the dog. Everything, So. It's I build their fitness up as I'm building the dogs up, and obviously I go over there and lose some weight because I'm not eating Big Macs anymore, and it's great. So
do you see that?
Good way to start it.
Is there a lot of injuries, because you say you're carrying a first aid pack for the dog? Is there a lot of injuries the dogs come across? Like I would think snake bites would be one thing, but is that an issue there? Not as much.
Honestly, not really. They're robust animals. The environment kind of like forces the dogs to be tough. They're sleeping in the field at nighttime, potentially. They're walking through, their pads are like rock solid, not, like seriously like solid dogs. They're groomed every day. So that obviously promotes like, a healthy coat, and helps with the cooling and all that kind of stuff. Their fitness piece. Guys, we do a lot of rectal temperature checks on the dogs. So they get one before a track, after a track, during a track, whatever. And if it's, we have certain protocols for different temperatures, what to do. And it's very, very strictly controlled. So, I got so much stuff that goes into place to ensure that the dog can operate, is what it comes down to. Because I need them to be able to perform.
Yeah, I think there's a big component of this that I'm hearing that I didn't really know about, and that is that you really put so much of an effort into making sure these dogs are cared for, that they're safe, that they're well nourished. And all these components, it's not just a tool now for you. This is actually a member of your team. And I think that's an important piece that people overlook, right? A lot of times, it's a tool, we're going to use it. If something happens, we'll get another dog. But for you, this is a member of your team that you're caring about, that you're checking temperature. You're trying to get it in better shape. You're trying to, it's sleeping with, obviously it probably has a much better life there than it ever did in Europe, because there it's just living in a kennel waiting to get purchased. Doubt. Now it's out.
On sawdust,
in the bush. Yeah, my God, it's like paradise for us. I want to be a dog and go track.
No, honestly, so I've trained every single one of the dogs. Like I said earlier, we're going to have our 40th kind of dog up and running by the end of this year. And I know all of them pretty intimately, and I do enjoy working every single one of them, and they all have their different quirks and deficiencies and positives, and every dog's different. But I do enjoy working every single one of them and watching the progress. The thing that I love the most about it is the handlers and seeing their progress, because I can train a dog, obviously, and I'm confident I can do that, and I wouldn't be doing the work that I'm doing if I couldn't. And but getting those guys who come from these backgrounds, and where they've come from very poor communities, potentially, not every single one of them, obviously, but the majority have come from a very poor community. They're malnourished, undereducated, like literally no electricity, no running water at home, poor backgrounds. And they'd have a dog at home, and literally that thing is just a warning device. So it's chained up to a tree, and it's going to alert when the leopard's coming for the goats or the chickens, or when another neighbor's coming to steal something, or there's a drunk guy walking down the road, whatever. Like, that's what the dog's there for. It's not there for that dog has to feed itself, get its own water, and it's going to eat like insects, whatnot. It doesn't get any flea and tick prevention, no dewormer, no nothing. It's got the shortest shelf life you can imagine. We trained a young dog that we got from a community over there. I have to send you a video for it of some of the training we did. But we called her Fury. We got her at like 6 weeks old, and within a 1 kilometer kind of radius, we tested 55 puppies, and I picked her, and there was another one I called Blue Eyes. It was a puppy who just had these blue eyes, and I was trying to convince the folks that were basically, paying for the program, let's get another one as a backup. And they were like, look, let's just stick to one. Otherwise, we're just going to become this like adoption center. And they're right, So we just went with the 1 and not the 2. But Fury is the only dog out of all 55 puppies that survived, like within 2 weeks. The rest of them all got eaten by wildlife, kicked and killed, stones, thrown in rivers, whatever, name it, like just the worst possible like nightmare outcome. And that's what happened to the other 54 puppies. And some of them were so feral I couldn't even get near them anyway. They were just like properly kind of born in the wild. But anyway, old Fury we trained up, and I was looking at can this local breed operate better in this environment, and we didn't quite finish the project. It's something I definitely want to like pursue and test out some more. But I do think it needs to be a puppy that's raised there and trained there. Obviously puppy training is completely different to taking a 12-month-old dog and training it. So
for sure.
It's time is what it comes down to. But no, it was good because I got to like explore some different training techniques and teach the guys some different stuff. And I think it was like a beneficial process for everybody, just to kind of give them for their kind of career development and their personal development, like different tools.
Yeah. I mean, what an amazing thing. I didn't realize that the whole thing with the dog. I mean, I know the dogs are pretty much just a tool for them there to protect or whatever. And a lot of them get eaten by the leopards, right? I mean, the local dogs.
Yeah. All of them. Yeah. So, I mean, if you think of those communities, there's no fridge, there's no running water, there's no nothing. So like if a family, wants to eat meat, it's a goat, a chicken, maybe a cow. Cows are seen more as like kind of wealth, depending on which part of the continent you're on. Yeah, exactly. So it's rare. It's going to be like a celebratory, kind of meal almost, with a lot of people attending. Right. So I mean, those animals are kept alive until they're needed, and then they're slaughtered. There's no empathy, there's no emotional connection to an animal. It's like me throwing a rock into the river. It's literally, it's the same kind of passion. It's gone. There we go. Right. But I had fun throwing it. If you think about that, now those same, that same culture is coming in, and I'm like, hey, I want you guys to handle these dogs. We're going to go catch poachers with these dogs, and they're like, dogs can't catch poachers. Their kind of perception of a dog is completely different to ours. And who am I to come in there and try and force him to do something and try and, for me, proof's in the pudding. I will show you how this dog can help you catch poachers. And then we go and I demonstrate it, and I'm not trying to like convince him through conversation. It's never going to work. But I think it's critical to have a good understanding of those backgrounds and those communities where these guys are coming from, so that you can set the program up for success. It's not just I got invited to a conference, and there was a bunch of folks there, and it was in Namibia, and these other dog guys were, they got pretty cool backgrounds, and they come from pretty cool places, and Stoops knows them, and they were like, hey, what you do the basic program, we'll do the advanced program. I was like, jog on, I'll do both programs. I don't need your help. And then they go up and they give their little lesson, and they kind of like talk on dogs and stuff. And the one guy gets up there, he's like we used to be friends. I haven't spoken to him for a long time. I don't say anything negative about him. Gets up and he starts talking about the basic equipment a dog handler needs. And, this is coming from a person who has no cultural understanding of Africa and never operated in those environments with these type of rangers. This is not like a tier 1 soldier you're working with. This is not like that level of, kind of like training. This is a guy who probably got his first pair of shoes is when he became a ranger.
Right.
And they go up and they were talking about night vision goggles and body armor and types of weapons and weapon systems
Right.
and this. And I just sat there and I was like, keep talking, buddy, because you're giving me work. And
Yeah.
he got up there. And but it just demonstrated such a disconnect between, like, a Western kind of mindset of what right looks like. Let's go in there and do this. With an unlimited budget versus what you have to deal with. And the whole time this guy's talking, I was sitting next to a guy and he was the director of Etosha National Park. And, I respectfully would call him which is uncle. And, I'm in the culture, understand like respect and how to like communicate with people there. And I said, what do you think, And he's like, he goes, I can't. He goes, I'm getting messages from the boss now, and the boss is the minister, because tourists have complained in Etosha that they can't use the bathroom, the porta-johns, because they're full. And he's like, do you know why the porta-johns are full? And I was like, obviously, no, I'm gone. And he's like, I had to take the tires from the vehicle to clean the porta-johns and put them on the firefighting vehicle to go and fight the bushfire that's about to kill all my rhinos. So they don't have enough tires. And this guy standing up there talking about basic dog gear. And it's $35,000 for one handler. And these guys can't get 4 tires for a truck to clean the toilets or put the fire out with. You know what I mean? If you look at it from that perspective, like these guys, how they're successful blows my mind away. They work with the absolute basic of everything, very few resources. And they come in and they still do a good job, and they're still saving rhinos, they're still dehorning, they're still catching poachers, they're still doing all this stuff. And it's just like, it's humbling for me, like to be exposed to that and work with those kind of like people, that kind of passion. And then, so I apply the same principles to my program, where it's like, all right, I am planning for the most basic situation possible with the best possible outcome. And my training plan is shaped off of that philosophy. And so far it's worked.
Yeah, I mean, spectacular. I could talk to you for days on this. I mean, I just want to, why don't we wrap it up here? But I want to, when do you leave to go back to Africa? When are you going, and how long are you going to be gone?
Next week.
Oh, you're leaving next week?
Next week until Christmas. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get on the phone with you. When we disconnect here, I want to get on the phone with you, and I want to set up when you come back to do another one, because this is just an amazing topic, and just talk about some of the stuff you've done and take some pictures, and let's get back on. I want to put links in down below for people to donate to. I know you don't have your own 501c3, but there's organizations that they can donate to and earmark it for Invictus Canine, so that it goes right to your programs. And your programs are functioning on a shoestring budget. You're not doing the fancy gear, but you're doing the results. You're getting results. From small donational help, your work go a long, long way. And if you've never been to Africa, you should go. And if you don't have a chance to go, I mean, you could look at I'll put a link to my photography just to see some of it. Anything we can educate people on how important Africa is to our planet, and the work that you're doing there is so important to the health of the continent of Africa, and then the individual countries as well. I want to talk to you about some gorilla stuff, and when you come back on. And like I said, I've been to Uganda, Rwanda. I've never been to DRC. I'd probably go if you were with me. I don't want to go. I'm
not a big fan of the DRC either. So that's
cool. But so the last thing, just in wrapping this up, I want to know about the love notes that Stoops and Reaver put on your kennels in Holland.
I can't even remember what they wrote, mate. It was inappropriate, no doubt. And I just remember like getting them, being like, what? Like, how? And then I get these like random WhatsApps, and it's just the brotherhood, and it's good guys, and they've been massively supportive. They're good dudes, and I'm lucky to count them as friends.
Good.
But I love it that some stuff will be left unsaid. And,
better so.
I'll get them back some way, shape, or form.
But, you can take him to Africa.
Blackie's the worst one, man, in the UK. I took Blackie out to the DRC and to Kenya. And unfortunately, we had a change of positions in the program, so we didn't get to do any like cool stuff. We just did a lot of training, so I've got to get him back out there and get him working. But I know. I mean,
get him off the farm.
It's exactly. Yeah, get him back doing some dog work.
It's funny. I want to get him on the podcast, but his internet connection is so slow. It's like
it's horrible.
I said I can't.
Proper country bumpkin now.
Seriously, I mean, my God, I think he has to like crank the generator to get some electricity going there.
Yeah. No, totally. No, he's a good guy. You know, like we had some, like obviously some of those tracks and stuff where you get charged by an elephant, or
Hmm.
we're catching poachers, and some of the crazy stories. But I want him to like share some of those stories with me. So it's not
Okay,
just me
well,
saying that I did it.
no, I believe.
Yeah.
Let's get you back on after Christmas when you get back, and
Yeah.
talk about some more
No worries.
stuff. And I'm gonna stop here. I'm gonna put links down below. Just sit tight with me for 1 second. Hang on.